The night carried that biting chill that seeps into the walls and lingers in your bones. Maya stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, the steam rising in gentle curls that blurred the frosted window above the sink. At 44, she had grown used to nights like this, quiet, cold, and heavy with the kind of solitude that presses down harder in winter. Since her husband passed, the old house had felt emptier than ever, its creaking floors echoing a silence she could never quite fill. But at least she wasn't completely alone anymore. Arman, the young man who rented the upstairs room, had become an unexpected presence in her life. At 22, he balanced long shifts at a local bookstore with late-night classes at the community college. Maya admired his determination. His love for literature reminded her of her younger self, before life had hardened her edges. That evening, the front door opened with a soft creak. Arman stepped inside, shoulders slumped, his dark hair falling across tired eyes. The exhaustion etched into his face made Maya's chest tighten. He dropped his bag near the coat rack and gave her a faint smile. "Rough night?" she asked gently, setting the ladle down. He shrugged, his voice low. "I don't feel so great, honestly." Maya's instincts sharpened. She reached for a heavy quilt from the closet, her caretaker's side overriding hesitation. "Come, the soup will wait. You need warmth first. The house is freezing." Arman didn't argue. He followed her to the sitting room, collapsing onto the worn couch as though gravity had doubled. She draped the quilt over him, tucking the edges around his shoulders the way she used to for her own son years ago. His eyes fluttered shut, and for a brief moment, Maya felt the faint stir of something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time: connection. The living room was dimly lit, the only glow coming from the lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the old wallpaper. Maya sat at the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap, watching the way Arman's chest rose and fell under the quilt. He looked so young in that moment, yet the weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders. She hadn't expected him to become so much a part of her daily rhythm. At first, renting out the upstairs room had been purely practical, extra income to keep up with bills. But over the months, Arman's presence had filled a silence she didn't realize had been suffocating her. His laughter in the kitchen, his books stacked neatly in corners, the way he asked about her day, it softened the edges of her solitude. "Do you want some tea?" Maya asked softly, unsure if he was still awake. His eyes opened slowly, hazel irises dulled with fatigue. "Maybe later," he murmured. Then, after a pause, "Thanks for caring. Not everyone does." The words struck her more deeply than she expected. She smiled gently, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't have to thank me, Arman. You're part of this home now." He shifted under the quilt, moving closer to where she sat, his arm brushing lightly against hers. The contact was brief but enough to send a ripple through her. She told herself it was nothing, just a tired gesture, seeking comfort, but the awareness of his nearness made her pulse quicken. She drew in a breath, steadying herself. The heater hummed in the background, struggling to push warmth into the drafty house. Outside, snowflakes tapped gently against the windowpane, as if urging her to notice how close they suddenly were. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, unsure if the chill in her body came from the winter air or from the unexpected stirrings within her. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the low hum of the heater and the faint howl of wind outside. Maya tried to focus on the rhythm of her own breathing, but her thoughts refused to settle. Every time Arman shifted beneath the quilt, the small brush of movement sent her awareness spiraling. She reminded herself, this is innocent. He's just exhausted, just cold. That's all. Yet her heart betrayed her with its steady, uneven thrum. It had been years since anyone had leaned on her like this, trusted her with their vulnerability. She wasn't sure if the warmth she felt rising in her chest was maternal, protective, or something she didn't dare name. Maya, Arman whispered suddenly, his voice hoarse from fatigue. Do you ever feel like you're carrying too much alone? The question caught her off guard. She turned her head, meeting his gaze. There was no guard in his eyes, only a raw honesty that left her exposed. Every day, she admitted quietly. But I've learned to hide it well. He gave a faint, tired smile, as if her words both comforted and saddened him. Then he leaned back, letting his head rest near her shoulder. Maya froze, her body stiff with the weight of the moment. She wanted to tell him to rest, to reassure him, but her throat tightened around the words. Before she could gather herself, a sharp knock rattled the front door. The sound cut through the fragile stillness, startling them both. Maya rose quickly, grateful for the interruption, even as her heart pounded with confusion. At the door stood Mr. Rahim, her kindly neighbor in his late 50s, bundled in a snow-dusted coat. His expression was laced with concern. Evening, Maya, he said warmly. I saw your lights on. Thought I'd check if the heater's giving you trouble again. Behind her, Maya sensed Arman stir, his presence taut and watchful. Maya stepped aside, ushering Mr. Rahim into the warm glow of the living room. He carried the familiar smell of snow and damp wool, his cheeks flushed from the cold. It's nothing urgent, Maya explained quickly, her voice steadier than she felt. The heater's been sluggish all evening. I thought it might just be the weather. Mr. Rahim gave her a reassuring smile. Well, let's take a quick look, just in case. He set down his flashlight and knelt beside the unit near the wall, his tools clinking softly as he worked. Maya answered his small talk with automatic politeness, questions about her job at the library, comments about the snowfall, the usual neighborly rhythm. But she was acutely aware of Arman in the background. He had shifted upright on the couch, quilt draped loosely over his shoulders, his gaze flicking between her and Mr. Rahim with an unreadable intensity. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight. When Mr. Rahim asked about Arman's classes, Maya noticed the young man's clipped response, they're fine. Short, almost dismissive. The tension that filled the room wasn't lost on her. After a few minutes, Mr. Rahim stood, brushing his hands on his jeans. All set. It should keep steady now, he said, offering Maya another warm smile. But call me if it acts up again. No trouble at all. Thank you, she replied, walking him to the door. For a fleeting second, she wished she could hold on to the normalcy he brought, the simplicity of his concern. As the door closed behind him, silence reclaimed the house. Maya turned to find Arman still watching her, his expression shadowed, unreadable. You okay? She asked softly. He shrugged, his tone clipped. Didn't expect him to show up, that's all. The weight of his words lingered, unsettling her. She sensed something unspoken between them, something she wasn't ready to face. The door clicked shut, and the echo seemed to linger longer than it should have. Maya leaned against it for a moment, her pulse still unsettled. The house felt heavier somehow, as though Mr. Rahim's presence had stirred currents she couldn't control. When she turned back, Arman was still on the couch, his posture rigid, eyes lowered. The quilt had slipped to the floor, but he didn't bother picking it up. The quiet stretched, thick and uneasy, until Maya crossed the room and sat down across from him. You've barely said a word, she ventured softly. Arman's gaze flicked up, meeting hers for a second before darting away. I just don't like interruptions, he muttered. It felt like he was intruding. Maya frowned, her heart tightening. He was only trying to help. I know. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. But it didn't feel like that. The words hung between them, charged with a meaning Maya didn't dare name. She folded her hands, steadying herself. Arman, what's really going on with you? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, his shoulders slumped, the exhaustion in his face softening into something more vulnerable. I don't know, he admitted. When I'm here, with you, it feels different. Safer. But at the same time, it confuses me. Her breath caught. The honesty in his tone cut through her defenses. She wanted to reach out, to smooth the furrow in his brow, but her hand stayed frozen in her lap. It confuses me too, she whispered before she could stop herself. He looked at her then, truly looked, and the intensity of his gaze made her chest ache. For a heartbeat, the space between them felt impossibly small, filled with questions neither of them had the courage to answer. The quiet pressed in around them, so thick that even the faint hum of the heater seemed distant. Maya sat frozen, her mind a whirlwind of warnings and wants, while Arman's eyes held her in place. There was no accusation in his gaze, only a raw vulnerability that mirrored her own confusion. Maya, he said at last, her name breaking the silence like a fragile thread. Is it wrong, to want to feel close to someone who understands? The question tore through her, leaving her unmoored. She opened her mouth, but words failed her. Instead, she found herself leaning slightly forward, drawn by something she couldn't fully resist. Arman mirrored the movement, their proximity charged, their breaths tangling in the narrow space between them. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Every rational part of her screamed to pull back, to laugh it off, to reclaim the familiar distance. But her body betrayed her with its trembling stillness, as if caught in the gravity of the moment. Arman lifted a hand, hesitant, and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light, tender, but it made her chest tighten with an ache she hadn't felt in years. She closed her eyes for a fleeting second, letting the warmth of his fingers linger longer than it should have. Then reality struck. She inhaled sharply, pulling back just enough to break the spell. We're both tired, she whispered, her voice trembling. This isn't the time. Arman's hand dropped, his face flushed with embarrassment. He gave a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, she cut him off with a gentle shake of her head. Don't apologize. We're just caught in something we don't understand yet. The silence returned, heavier now, but beneath it ran an undeniable current neither of them could. Maya rose from the couch, needing the space, needing air that wasn't so heavy with what had almost happened. She walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Outside, snow still drifted silently, each flake landing without fanfare, disappearing into the whiteness. She envied that kind of quiet. Behind her, she heard Arman shift restlessly. His voice, low and uncertain, carried across the room. Maya. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening to me. Earlier, it wasn't fair to you. She turned slowly, her heart tightening at the sight of him. He sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, his face shadowed with conflict. He looked like a boy caught between worlds, wanting something but afraid of it at the same time. Crossing the room, Maya placed a hand lightly on his arm. The gesture was small, but it stilled him. Arman, you don't need to apologize, she said softly. We're both searching for something we can't name yet. Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's more. But whatever it is, it doesn't have to be decided tonight. His eyes lifted to hers, glimmering with relief and sorrow all at once. I don't want to ruin what we have, he admitted. This place, it's all I've got. Her throat ached with unshed words, with feelings she didn't dare unravel. Instead, she squeezed his arm gently. Then let's not rush. Let's give it time. If it's real, it won't disappear. And if it's just confusion, it'll fade on its own. Arman nodded, leaning back against the couch, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. For a long moment, they sat in silence, bound not by answers but by the fragile understanding that some things can't be forced. Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing the world in stillness, as if urging them both to wait.